Welcome to Driving the Cbus, featuring insights from individual contributors from all corners, nooks, and crannies of the Columbus, Ohio region. Our goal is to get to the why of our evolving and eclectic environment, which we all share by the people driving the bus. Well, today I'd like to welcome Linda Logan. Linda is the Executive Director at the Greater Columbus Sports Commission. She comes to us with a degree from Ohio University, so she's a Bobcat in Communications and Sports Administration. And that degree she's used greatly to her to her success in Cleveland, Milwaukee, Kansas City, and Columbus. She is the founder of the, clear back in 2002, of the Greater Columbus Sports Commission. And she's worked events such as presidential debates, the Final Four for men's and women's sports, and I'm sure hundreds of other things. So with that, I'd like to welcome Linda Logan to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Wonderful, Linda. Well, thanks very much. You know, driving the Cbus is all about finding those people who most folks may or may not have heard of, or organizations that they haven't heard of, and really bringing those to light to show how those things have affected Columbus. And you know, one of the ones that I was astonished to hear about was your story, and also the story of the Greater Columbus Sports Commission. So why don't we start off by just talking about, you know, what is the Sports Commission? What do they do, you know, currently for the city?
Great. So think of us as sports tourism. We were originally part of Experience Columbus. I was originally hired there 22 years ago to start and incubate the sports effort. And then we spun off about 5 years later to create the Greater Columbus Sports Commission. And so we're the only organization in the city that's 100% dedicated to bringing sporting events to Columbus. So think of volleyball tournaments at the convention center, or softball tournaments at Berliner Park, and a lot of the participation sports. And then those one-of-a-kind events like the Women's Final Four that we just hosted, you know, just a few weeks ago, or the NHL All-Star Game. And I think your listeners would be surprised to know how long those events are in the making before we actually host them. So Women's Final Four, we were at it since 2007 and hosted it in 2018. So the journey sometimes is a little longer at times, but well worth it.
Well, you know, it's actually just investing in the future, right? I mean, so from 2002, I bet it was going back to that. Let's just maybe turn the history wheel back just a little bit and talk about, you know, in 2002, you came to Columbus based on a recommendation by your sister. Is that right?
Yes, my sister and her family lived here, and my nephews were young, and I was living in Kansas City, and I think my sister said something like, "Don't you want your nephews to know you better?" So, you know, here I am some 20 years later, and certainly it was
you came here with nobody and no job.
Yep,
or
no
except
job,
for your
and
nephews.
it's right, exactly that, right? So I think about that when I look at them and how they now are grown up, and one's a fireman, one's a policeman, and I think about the great things they do for the community. And so I have to smile when I think of those early days. And when I first started working in Columbus, I had worked at the Kansas City Convention Center and got to work a million events. I'm exaggerating just a little bit, but came to Columbus and started instantly booking events like volleyball tournaments, and I brought the Mid-American Conference basketball tournament here back in the day. And so I was really doing a sports commission for the building, but no one was doing it for the whole city.
Right.
And I had that opportunity to work big events when I was in Kansas City. They have one of the oldest sports commissions in the country that was started in the early 60s. And here we started ours in 2002.
So what year was that you came to Columbus? What year?
I got here in the year 2000.
Oh,
99, I'm sorry. I've got to think about that. 28 years ago, I have to backtrack just a little bit. And I worked for the convention center for 7 years, 5 years for Experience Columbus, and then now the 16 years with Experience, or with the Sports Commission.
Right?
89, yeah, 89, right at the end of 89.
So back in there, and you came here and you worked for the
Yes, I was working for the convention center in those
well,
early days.
But in the convention center,
It was groundbreaking.
Battelle Hall was like the only place to have that, and Vets Memorial, right? Where the two
Correct.
places. I remember seeing Def Leppard in Battelle Hall.
And Battelle Hall was our arena. It was
Right.
before we had St. John Arena, we had Battelle Hall. So we had, from a concert perspective, we had acts on their way up and on their way down. We just didn't have that big. We were really the largest city in the country without a major arena.
Right.
So both the Schottenstein Center and Nationwide Arena, of course, came on board, and that was really about the same time that we were lobbying to create the Sports Commission because, Moffray Stadium was coming on board. Those two arenas I talked about. Ohio State was building an Olympic Village. When you think about Bill Davis Stadium, all the great work that was being done with the softball fields and all of that. So the timing was perfect for me to have experienced the Sports Commission in Kansas City and all those efforts of bringing marquee events to the community. And just the timing was right, and I had that experience and was able to really work with so many of the civic leaders in the community to really understand what this effort could mean. And really we were planting seeds in those early days, and now to think that we really hosted the Women's Final Four, it took maybe 22 years when you combine some of those efforts, and it's amazing to see how the community has grown.
Now, you mentioned something there that really piqued my interest. You said Ohio State was building an Olympic Village.
Well, I call it that because when you think about the caliber of events that are on campus, and we're so fortunate to have them in our own backyard, and you think about Jesse Owens Stadium and Bill Davis Stadium and the renovations to Ohio Stadium and the building of the Schottenstein Center and on and on. I say it's an Olympic Village because not only do we have those facilities, but we have great training centers for our wrestling team and the fencing teams. And
you got me all excited, like you guys are planning. It took you 11 years, right, to get the Women's Final Four. In 20 years, are we going to have the Olympics here?
I think we have a long way to go when you think about the Olympics. We need a few more international flights, I think. But that all comes into play when you think about what events need when they come to our community. So more connectivity, more daily flights, more downtown hotel rooms, and more things to do. And I think, when you look at when we started this effort and how the city has grown, our visitors love Columbus. Once we get them here, once they get them here, or we get them here, I think they want to come back.
Well, obviously, you have a personal interest in what you do, and I can see that in your passion. What made you pick that line of business or that field? I mean, was it just something that you happenstance into and fell in love with it, or did you always want to do it?
I'm from a generation pre-Title IX, so I never played sports, but I was a passionate Cleveland Indians fan, and I guess I was a baseball nerd. I kept stats, and in my small high school, I was our sports editor, and I was the track statistician. So during my day, I didn't even dream that there would be a job for women in sports. I think I fancied the fact that could I be the very first sports journalist that would cover Major League Baseball. But I soon learned in college I wasn't a very good writer, but I was a good communicator, and so who even dreamed that there were jobs like this out there for someone like me? So it was a great timing. The Title IX came on board right when I got to college, and doors were opening for people like me. And so I had the opportunity to go to a great university that was the very first of its kind to have a program in sports administration. So again, I in the early days, I was on the facility management side. So I got to work at the Kemper Arena in Kansas City and their convention center. I worked for a few sports teams, and really it was taking my love of sport, the fact that I was a really good connector when it came to people. I was really an operations person in the early days. I didn't even know I could be a salesperson. I used to make fun of people like me that are now selling something. I'm dealing futures, but it was the combination of kind of knowing my stuff, loving to meet new people, being able to share the passion of this great destination. So really, I feel like I don't even know if I should get paid for what I do.
Well, I'll tell you what. Okay, I want to hear the sales pitch. So let's just pretend that I'm from someplace. I've got this big event, and and you're pitching me to come to Columbus. What do you say?
Well, first of all, we are one of the hottest cities right now in the Midwest. Whether it's many cranes in the air, and there's something we call the Columbus Way, the collaborative nature of the public and private sector. We have this world-class arena and convention center. We have 5,000 hotel rooms within walking distance. We've got 1 million daily flights, or I'm exaggerating just a little bit, but when you walk out the door, whether you're at the arena or the convention center, there's 100 restaurants. You can go to the Short North. There's fine dining. There's hot dog and food truck vendors. So what I love to say about our city is that once we get you here, you're going to want to come back, and whether it's your fans, your teams, your coaches, they are going to have a big experience. You are going to be the big fish in our community. So whether it's being on the news, getting great television highlights, feeling like we are rolling out the red carpet for you. Our city and our community is engaged, and we are going to not only make sure that you're successful for your bottom line, because oftentimes these events, that's one of their biggest fundraisers of the year, but also you're going to have a great experience while you're here.
Oh, that's great. So Experience Columbus, that's no lie, right?
Absolutely. And that, we're an LLC, a limited liability company of Experience Columbus. So,
right.
Tourism is really our main game, but we really at the Sports Commission have 3 pillars that we're graded on. One is, of course, the economic development. Second is really raising the profile and image of Columbus. And third is really that quality of life of doing great things for Columbus through sports. So when you think about an event like the Women's Final Four, we're like check, 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 all 3 boxes. And it went so well. I know I'm still smiling and maybe basking in sort of the aftermath of all that hard work and the community coming together. But when you are at it for so long and you have a dream and a vision and it comes together even better than you can ever expect it, I guess we get to talk about it for a few more years.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, when you see it coming for so long and then it happens, and then it came off without a hitch as well. I heard that it was, I wasn't here in town that weekend, but I heard that it was awesome. And lots of compliments from people from out of town and things. So let's talk more about some of those events. So when we talk about what the commission does, how Linda's working for the people of Columbus, behind the scenes, under the current, what are those events?
So what will happen is we have a great staff of full-time staff of 12, and we will get a request for bid, let's say with USA Volleyball. So they're our national governing body for the sport. So there are several of those governing bodies that are headquartered either in Colorado Springs or Indianapolis. So our business development team may take a trip there. We might go door to door. I think a lot of these folks know us now, but we will go through the checklist. They need a facility that can put 40 volleyball courts. They need X amount of hotel rooms. They want to make sure that our daily flights are affordable, and then what's there to do while their attendees and their fans and their teams are here. So I think we go through, it could be a 40-page bid that we'll put together, and we'll canvass the hotels on availability and rates. And so we'll then put together a bid that will really highlight all the things that I mentioned. Think of all the visitor touch points, the airport, what kind of a taxi lift we might have, what there is to do, or if it's July 4th weekend, what kind of events are happening throughout the city so that people, when they are here and they're not competing, they still have a lot to do. Those are things that people look for. So we have to check the boxes first on the competition sites, and does it fit? Do we have enough of those things I talked about? And then what are those enhancements? Because there's probably 40 other cities that want that same business, and competition is fierce, and we might be bidding against, Cleveland or Cincinnati, Kansas City, St. Louis. We really are always monitoring what our neighbors are doing as well, because we always have to know what our competition is all about. And then there are times like the Women's Final Four where we had to really raise extra dollars. And in this case, we had to put together $2.6 million to host the event. So we had about 24 partners, both public and private, that came together about 4 years ago and committed to that. And we're just in the midst of paying all those bills right now. And of course, we're very much indebted to those 24 partners that really helped to put us on the map a little bigger.
That's great. So the Women's Final Four would be one. USA Volleyball, I'm sure the Ohio Valley Volleyball Association, the OVA. What other ones? Is the Quarter Horse Congress something that you work with?
Our partners at Experience Columbus do handle the Quarter Horse Congress. They've been coming here for many, many years, and we're very proud of them. So we are always prospecting. Think of Olympic trials. Could there be an Olympic trial for wrestling that just would be a great fit for us, or diving? We kind of match up what our facilities are. We had synchronized swimming and weightlifting a few years ago. And then we're also looking at national championships. Are there any world championships? We've got our eye on USA figure skating. Could that perhaps come here in 2023? So we've attended that event maybe 6 or 7 times over the last decade, just to make sure that, will it fit here? Can we raise the money? Can we sell the tickets? So those are all things that we think about when we're going after a big event like that.
Gotcha. Any sneak peeks in anything in the future you can tell us today?
Nothing. It's funny because our North Star for so long has been the Women's Final Four. So I think that as a community, we have to decide what's on that aspirational list. Because I think we've checked many of them off the box so far.
Right. Now there's got to be obviously a lot of planning and like say tryouts, right? So you guys are trying to sell the city, and it takes that sales cycle is long. And we were just talking about the women's Final Four. That was 11 years long. So the sales cycle, right, to get that sell it before the event happens and everything else. How is that sports commission funded? Where does that money come from?
So that's a great question. So when we were first founded, which was in 2002, we had 7 corporate partners, if you will, that gave us the seed money to get started. And they gave us those dollars times 5 years to get us off the ground, because most of them felt that they didn't want us to have to be raising money every year. They wanted us to go out and sell the destination. So I'm happy to say all but one of those partners has stuck with us, and even the partner that had to leave us still supports us in many, many other ways. But
do you recall those 5? Who were those 5?
So I can give you a quick preview. Of course, Ohio State, of course, is a big partner nationwide. We have a Convention Facilities Authority, and it's just to name a few. And they've been these amazing partners with us for many, many years now. And I'm happy to say that those 5 have gone to almost 70 partners. So we do get funding on the private side, and then also we get a share of the hotel tax that goes through Experience Columbus through us as well. So the more we sell, the more events that come here, the bigger our budget is. So we really can show you that return on investment, and we are rewarded with that to get those extra marketing dollars and get back out there in the sales force and keep trying to sell the destination.
Yeah, well, I'm a return on equity kind of guy, right? I mean, I'm in the banking business, entrepreneur. So let's talk about return just a little bit. So your annual budget is how much to run what you guys do? How much do you think it is?
It's grown from our early years of $600,000. We're now at $2.8 million.
$2.8 million.
And
wow.
So it's really been fantastic. So you think about a sale like Women's Final Four was estimated to have $20 million worth of direct spend. So of course we had to spend some to get some, but in that case, and that's not even counting what the image building that we got from a media perspective as well. But so that's at least gives you a little idea of how we're funded.
Right. So that's what is that? That would be a. What I'm trying to do the quick math on that. It'd be 1,000, not 1,000%. It'd be a couple 100% return, right?
Absolutely.
Just on that one event.
And then you think about the tax.
Several events throughout the year, right?
And then you also think about the jobs that are secure because of tourism in general. That includes all tourism, but jobs also maybe everybody gets a little bit less taxes that they have to pay because of the sales taxes that are paid or the hotel taxes that come back to the community. So I think it's a win-win-win, and I'm so proud of our community too, because I think everyone puts a value on tourism, whether it's the county or the city or the state of Ohio or our partners and our merchants. I think they all see that when we have a big event in the city, those dollars go all around the community.
Well, I was at the airport not too long ago, and I think I may have mentioned this on another podcast, but I ran into a couple from Boston. They were actually here on vacation, because they can come. It's like super cheap for them because it's the value that we have, but we have all these great restaurants and everything. It just blew my mind that somebody from there would come here for vacation, but they're coming here for the events. They're coming here for the zoo. They're coming here for all kinds of different things.
And that's where I'm really proud of our tourism efforts. So Experience Columbus has a magical marketing team that has some great ideas and some very talented sales folks, whether it's on the tourism side or the group business. And so we are seeing the fruits of our labors now, especially in big markets like Chicago and Washington, D.C., where the most high concentration of associations. So think of American Nurses Association or the Ohio Hospital or the Banking Association. All of those associations have meetings, and I'm proud to say big meetings. So next year, this might be of interest to you, that the American Society of Association Executives, ASAE, will be hosting their annual convention in Columbus.
Wow.
So it's the Super Bowl of meetings, and any community that has hosted that event sees $500 million worth of new business in the next 5 years of hosting that event. So cities like Toronto hosted it back in 2017. It'll be in Chicago this year, Columbus next year. So again, that may be an interesting conversation for your audience sometime soon, just to hear more about ASAE and what that might mean to the community.
Holy cow. That is the Super Bowl of all meetings. I know I've been trying to get the Independent Community Bankers of America to come to Columbus, and they're like, well, what's there to do in Columbus? I'm like, well,
we can help you with
all
that.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah.
we can help with
talk about it. Well, hey, you've had all kinds of different experiences with these events. What would tell me the one off the wall thing that happened with an event that you may have learned from or whatever, but just funny story or a weird thing happen, or did you get to play lead guitar with Van Halen on stage or what? So,
well, I'll tell you this one. My husband says that it was maybe one of our finest moments, even though it was a crisis. If you may recall, in 2012, we had a big storm during the July 4th week where half of Columbus, the power went out. So we were hosting the largest event that we've ever had in our city. It was USA Volleyball. We had 600 teams in town. Every hotel room was, I think they had 5,500 hotel room nights on their peak night. So all over the city, we were in day 2 of a 10-day tournament, and the storm went through. So we had, and 26 hotels lost power. So we had to jump into action, and I say the collective we, and we set up a crisis communication station. There was a third-party housing company that was actually the connectivity to the groups, but we were feeding them rooms, and we called as far to Dayton, we called Mansfield, we called private homes, we called realtors, and luckily for us, the power went on for most of them within about 36 hours, but even though it was grueling and devastating for those few hours, I was so proud of sort of the Team Columbus and how everybody jumped in there, and our customers noticed that too. USA Volleyball, when they went out to bid with their new housing company a few years later, they said, hey, what would you have done in this situation? And I think we got high marks because of the effort, and it was all hands on deck. So even though it was a true crisis, I think it really gave us additional clout, if you will, of maybe unintended consequences of just our good work and how our community pulled together.
That's great. Do you get to meet any famous people in your works? I mean, when you're putting these big events on and everything?
There are times that some of these big events that we just talked about, where some of the parents are past NFL players, or, I'm a big baseball fan, so I know we've had Darryl Strawberry or some football players whose kids are playing in some of these
used to play for the Clippers.
He did, right? So,
That's right.
So things like that, and I know that I'm probably
I'm dating myself there.
Some are escaping me right now, but I might just get all excited to see a coach like Muffet McGraw or some folks that might not recognize. But I think we're so fortunate in Columbus to have the opportunity to get these big events to the city.
That's awesome. Well, how about when we talk about the city itself, give me your impression on, you've been in town for a long time, 28 years. From where it's come to where it is today, to where you feel it's going, what's your outlook on the city?
I love our community. So to think about how open we are to visitors, to the arts, to the restaurant community. So, take tourism aside, I'm just so proud of sort of that effort of us being so welcoming and so many things to do. But I think that some of our neighborhoods could rival any city in America right now. So you think about, you're going to the convention center for the very first time. You're walking out those Goodale doors and you see the Short North just unfolding with the arches and the things to do and the retail shops and the restaurants and the beautiful new hotels that are coming on board. And so I just think to myself, holy cow, have we grown? And I really say to just about any one of my competitors, bring it on, because I think that our experiences here can rival just about any city in America right now.
Yeah, no pun intended with holy cow, right?
I know, exactly.
So it used to be a cow town.
That's true.
But you're right, holy cow. It's unbelievable, and I would completely agree with you. The people really make Columbus what it is. You go to any other city, and there's friendly cities, but Columbus is a very friendly city. You can ask almost anyone directions. If you're a guy that actually asks directions, most guys don't ask directions. But if you know what I mean, it's just it's such an inviting, socially and economically diverse place. And people don't really realize how diverse it is until they go to other cities and see how they're not maybe so diverse, or they're not so welcoming in certain instances.
And I so agree with you. When we looked around during the Women's Final Four, when I looked in the crowd, it was, fathers and daughters and families, and it was just, partners and groups of maybe girlfriends that decided, hey, this is a big event for girls and women. And then all the events that happened for kids and families. We had the basketball bounce, where we had 2,000 kids bouncing basketballs up High Street, and we had a read to the Final Four. We had over 2,000 Columbus school kids that got to read to the Final Four and got to be part of the fanfare that what's called Tourney Town. And what I was so proud of is just the engagement and how proud people were. We had over 1,000 volunteers that, gave of their own personal time to come out, and whether they got to be near the arena or in the hotels, everybody was so proud of the destination and our community. And then we had, I think, the highest viewership of any host city ever. I think it was an 8-point on the Nielsen.
Well, there were some really good games.
Exactly.
Too.
Things we couldn't control, but we're now taking credit for those games, I think, too. But it was fun.
How did you get it to come down to the last shot,
the Notre Dame star that made both of those winning shots, her name is Arike Agumbawale. So I had to learn how to say her name because I feel like we're forever tied in history, with her, and just it was amazing.
That's incredible. Well, any questions you'd have for me that you wanted to ask?
I just think it's fun as a sports person. Do you have any favorite sports moments, or are you a fan of a certain team? That might be fun to know.
Well, as everyone knows, the Ohio State Buckeyes are my team, and I went to Ohio State twice. The first time I majored in High Street, and the second time I went and actually finished and got my degree. So the Buckeye football and anything Buckeye, I'm into. So I'm into the Crew. I'm into the Clippers. I'm going to a Clippers game tonight, as a matter of fact, with some folks from out of town. So anything that Columbus has, Blue Jackets, I'm just here to support the community. I don't get a chance, being an entrepreneur myself and running a community bank, I don't get a chance to go to all the games of any one team except for the Buckeye football team. I have to admit, I follow them wherever they go and go to bowl games and away games and just spend a lot of time there. So.
Well, good. Well, thanks for the update. Anything on your bucket list that you would like to tell me about?
I guess, I get up every day and do something that I've never done before. And it's pretty liberating. It's scary at times. But I never thought I would be running $1 billion bank here in little Columbus, Ohio, and that we would grow up one day to be, the entity that we
Columbus.
are. Or Big Columbus, that's right. And so I guess in my bucket list, I'm over 50 now, so I am starting to look at life a little bit differently than I did when I thought I was bulletproof and I could walk up the hill and not, catch a breath. And so, I'm starting to reflect back on what the more important things are in my life. How much time do I get to spend with my wife that I've kind of neglected for the last 25 years or 30 years being an entrepreneur. When's it time for Scott to enjoy himself, instead of putting his customers first, and although I'll always keep my customers first, I have to get a little greedy with some of my time. And, I'm doing this now as well. I really think in the future I would love to get more into broadcasting and to talk to some other folks about, how we could take some of my experience and put that to work so we can help folks learn that entrepreneurialism is alive and well everywhere. And you can be an entrepreneur and work for anyone. It's just your attitude of how you're working.
Well, you love what you do. That's very evident.
Yeah, and loving what you do. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what the bucket list has. I've lived a good life. I've obviously been very blessed, and it's taken a lot of hard work. But I've learned a lot along the way. And Columbus itself, I've grown up in this town. I've been here since I was 1. And it's come a long way, and I'm hopefully one of Columbus's best ambassadors. I'm out there telling my story to all the community bankers of America that Columbus is the center of the universe. Ohio is the center of the universe.
I'm with you on that.
I think I've almost got them convinced of that.
We need to take you on the road with us.
That's it. There you go. Well, I'll be more than happy to do that. So I'm sure we can make a loan along the way. So, well, with that, Linda, thanks very much for what you do for Columbus. Being the founder of the Greater Columbus Sports Commission and all the different things that you do as far as supporting, I just can't even imagine all the multitudes and layers of businesses that rely on what you do and the benefit that you've provided the city. So thanks very much for driving the bus.
Same to you. Thank you.